So I'm sure you've built fantasy towns, or I'm sure your world has fantasy towns. The question really is, how do you make them feel unique? How do you make them feel like they're different? Each one having its own little unique flavors. That's what I want to talk about today, while I take you for a walk in the almost spring Finnish forests. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time World Building with your host, Marie Mullaney. Okay, so today we're going to cover 5 ways in which you can make your fantasy town feel unique without resorting necessarily to magic or fantasy elements. We are going to also discuss how you can incorporate magic into these elements and how you can use these elements in your plot to bring them into the story. Okay, so we're going to start this discussion in Rome. Right, the Roman example is the keyhole view. That is located on the Aventine Hill in Rome on the priory of the Knights of Malta. Okay, so this is a really awesome keyhole. It's like not a modern keyhole, it's like an ancient keyhole, right? And it's pretty big. And because it's so big, which way do you think we should go? I think we should be heading on the blue track. So let's go towards the blue. All right. So with this keyhole, if you look through the keyhole, you get this like amazing view of a hedge. And then you can see across 3 sovereign territories, right? And you get this perfect view of the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, the big church, the big Catholic church in Rome, which is where the Vatican is, right? And the three sovereign territories you can see across is the territory of the Knights of Malta, who were given sovereign status by the Pope during the Crusades. I think it was Pope Innocent III, something like that. Anyway, so you can see across there sovereign territory, which is basically a couple of buildings. And then you can see the Vatican, of course, which is a sovereign territory. And of course you can see Italy itself, which is a nation state. So you could create something like that in your world. Something where you can see through a small aperture of some kind. And beyond that aperture, you can see across multiple sovereign entities or multiple magical entities. And you can extend and you can get this view of this one thing, right? You can get a view of a building or of a wall where a prophecy is written or something like that. This kind of aperture or thing that you can see through is really ideal for any plots that involve, say, spying on somebody or prophetic revelations. You know, you peer through the keyhole during the 3rd rise of the moon, and there is the words of prophecy is written on the wall of the great cathedral, whatever the case may be. So it works really well for anything like that. But even if you don't use it for plot, just including such a thing in your town or in your city gives that city a really unique flavor. I mean, Rome has three sovereign entities in it. That's just cool all by itself. All right, so that is the keyhole view of Rome. Our second example is the seasonal shadow alignment of Chichen Itza. Now, Chichen Itza is in Mexico, and it was built, I think it was the Aztecs who built it. And They built this big pyramid in the middle. Massive, massive pyramid. And on the seasonal alignment, on the spring equinox, between 5:30 and 6 in the afternoon, so 17:30 and 18 to people who, like me, count in 24 hours. The shadow on the pyramid forms a snake, and that snake culminates when it joins the staircase decoration at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the head of the god that they worshipped, which was the flying serpent, Kukulkan. The flying serpent, Kukulkan. And so it looks like there's like this flying serpent body made out of shadows, which then culminates in the head of the serpent at the bottom of the pyramid. It looks incredibly cool. And it's just an effect of the way that they built the pyramid, right? It was clearly deliberately done. There's no way you do this by accident. And it only happens on the equinox. But it can be done by anyone who has a comprehensive understanding of time, of the equinoxes, and who has a reasonably skilled level of engineering, so capable of building pyramids and planning how those shadows will fall when the sun hits at what angle. It is, from a fantastical perspective, a really good fit for any illusion magic or shadow magic, and of course for religions. I mean, it is the god's favor as the equinox changes that his shadow ripples across our city. That kind of thing. But if you want more information about illusion magic, I did make a whole video of that, which I'll leave a link to in the info card, which will be also at the bottom of the description of the video. So you can check that out there. Oh, my notes say the Maya built it, not the Aztecs. So scratch that Aztec bit, replace it with a Maya. Anyway, from a plot perspective, it can again tie into anything kind of prophetic or future orientated, especially with its connection to the equinoxes and time and that kind of thing. And it can also potentially provide a portal. It can actually be that there is some kind of divine power. Eating my hair there. There is some kind of divine power that actually does manifest during the equinoxes. When the shadow ripples, the god could become real, and speak instructions or provide magic or whatever the case may be. So it would be a very interesting element to include in any kind of time-based plot. Because the moment the equinox hit, because the shadow ripples, right? And that then provides you with either a ticking clock, you have to do something before then, or a stopwatch. You have to hold out until that happens. Either way, you very directly involve time. So we're crossing a little bridge here. This is a very typical little creek in the Finnish wilderness. Alrighty. What is our next one? Before we get on to our next one, let me just quickly tell you about my newsletter. So it comes out once every 3 months, so I'm not going to spam your inbox. And it is completely free, so you don't have to pay anything for it. And it does include like some really good extra bits of world building, my thought processes, articles about series that I'm working on, like world building video series that I'm working on, as well as the books that I'm writing. And it also includes, a way to ask me questions and a question and answer section where I answer those questions. So if all of that sounds interesting to you, hit the link in the description and sign up for my newsletter. And that way, even if something weird and terrible were to happen on YouTube, you would still know where I am and how to reach me and how to get hold of my content. All right, so let's move on to our third way to make a city feel unique. So our third one is about using sound to make your town or city feel unique. And this one is found in London in the Whispering Gallery of St. Paul's Cathedral, and also in Beijing in the Echo Wall of the Forbidden City. So, this is a trick of architecture. In the case of the Whispering Gallery in St. Paul's, you say something on one end of the gallery, and the way that the dome is constructed, even if you whisper it, it will still go through to the other end of the gallery. If you ever wondered if I was AI in some way, just bear in mind that whenever I take you walking in the forest, I'm dropping stuff and freaking having to... Earlier on this hike, I put my freaking note tablet, because I have a little tablet that I carry my notes on, and I put that down just for like a second in the forest, and it was covered in ants like a second later. So now if I drop the mic or whatever, whatever weirdness happens, I have to I have to keep everything in my hands in case I'm once again like just overwhelmed by a myriad of ants. I did a video about insects first at one point, and that included ants. You can check that out in the information card too. Anyway, so back to sound. So the Whispering Gallery is very interesting in the way it's constructed because it carries the sound from one end of the building to the other, or from one end of this gallery to the other. The Echo Wall in Beijing is slightly different. So it doesn't carry the sound from one place to another, but it does echo the sound around the area, and it keeps echoing it. So the echo can kind of circle the whole place almost indefinitely, which is super freaking cool, right? So you could include that in your plot as a means of, if you make a specific sound and you cross it with another sound, there could be a hidden message inside it. You could use it to communicate between different characters, especially if you put the sound in like a different language or something like that. Say a whistling language that is carried across the specific architecture of a city. You could also include magic in it, of course. It could actually generate a certain kind of magic. Maybe the way that these sound waves cross could also be used as a means to break something. Like maybe you've got some kind of secret weapon or secret plot MacGuffin inside a box that requires sound of this frequency to be bounced back so many times, and then it will shatter the box. This like really custom-made key, which would be a really interesting approach. It could even open like a secret hidey hole or something like that. Way back when I did a video on secret places in fantasy. You should check that out in the information card. Okay, so we've done sound, we've done shadows, and we've done the keyhole. Our fourth one is actually plants, which, is appropriate. Check out that forest. Isn't that something else? Anyway, so, plants in a city. So, you don't often think of cities in Morocco as having a lot of greenery, right? But Marrakesh in Morocco actually has a lot of hidden gardens. So this is like the Jardin garden and so on, where they are sheltered behind walls. They're inside like a courtyard, right? And inside that courtyard, they have these little like canals, but really small canals, like the span of your hand kind of size. And they carry water to these plants that grow there. And in the Jardin garden, for example, they've got plants from every continent on the world, as well as having plants specific to the religion, to Islam. It's a very interesting garden. And it's a place that was built, at behest of the sultans at first and rebuilt a few times, carried on when Morocco was a French colony and so on. And it's a very, very green place in the midst of what is a very dry, very brown city because of the desert environment in which Morocco exists. So you could have these hidden gardens in a desert city, right? Where there is water, either done through engineering or magic, that people come to meditate in, or they come to meet in. It could be a place where people meet. It could be a place where they come to find inner peace. It could be a good place to build your character some time to rest, And you can, of course, in such a garden, in fantasy, you're not restricted to, just the plants that would grow in our world. You can build your own unique plants that might be related to your magic system. So these plants could be components in your magic systems, or they could be special fantastical plants that have unique properties. And if you're interested in knowing how to build fantastical plants in a fantasy world, I do have a video on that. Check it out in the information card. And our last way to make a town stand out as unique is to have old parts of a previous age be on display in the town. Now, what do I mean by that? So, in 2015, man, that feels like a lifetime ago, I'm not going to lie to you. But in 2015, I was in Lucca in Italy. They have walls around Lucca that date from the Renaissance. They are massive, biggest damn walls you've ever seen, right? They are so high, trees grow on them. I went for a run around the walls. It's about a 5K run, maybe 8Ks. And it just encircles the inner town, right? But back when those walls were built, they obviously encircled the whole of the town. But now the town has grown beyond its walls. It's much bigger than it was when those walls were built. So the walls represent a part of its history. They are a remnant of what it was before, which is a fortified town as part of the Italian city-states, right? Because all of the Italian city-states were heavily reinforced during the Renaissance, because none of them, Italy wasn't a country. They each stood with their own leadership, their own nobility, and they hired mercenaries to defend themselves. It was a very dodgy time for Italy. And so they had these very, very thick walls, which now remain as a sign of those times in cities like Lucca. And that's another very interesting way to not only make your town feel unique, but also to show your reader the history of your world. There was a time when these towns were actually had to be defended by these very, very thick fortifications. I did videos on defenders. I actually did a video where I spoke about the Italian period of the condottieri, which is this period in Italy's history, as sort of the potential origin for like adventurer guilds and things like that. I'll put links to both of those down below if I still have space on the information cards. And those are my 5 quick ways to make a city feel unique. Put in some kind of aperture or viewpoint that has a unique perspective on the city, like the keyhole of Rome. Put in some kind of shadow play or time-based thing that happens during the solstice and has some kind of visual effect with light and time passing. Put in some kind of sound-based thing like the Whispering Gallery of St. Paul or the Echo Wall of Beijing. Or put in some kind of hidden garden or other sort of hidden hidden peaceful area like the hidden gardens of Marrakesh. Or put in something from the past, something big and monumental from the city's past, like the walls of Lucca. And if you like this video, please do hit the thumbs up button and consider watching one of my videos on how to create a city-state or how to create towns in general in fantasy worlds. And thank you very much to my members who make videos like this possible, and especially to the just-in-timers of the Build It in Stone level, Lupex Lakeshire, Tony Lamanna, Katie, Kofi Mug, and Epic. And I will see you guys soon for another video from Just in Time World Building.